and order. People are waiting for action.
For more on this, I'm joined by Doug Klain, a non-resident fellow at the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center. Doug, Zelenskyy covered quite a bit of ground, but what stood out to you most from his speech?
Well, I thought it was a pretty striking speech that President Zelenskyy gave. He issued a real worldview, and it's a worldview that is shaped by years of Russia's relentless invasion against Ukraine. Zelenskyy outlined in his speech the collapse of international law and international bodies, saying that values are all good and well, but if you don't have weapons to defend those values and uphold international law, then somebody else with weapons willing to use force gets to decide this reality. He also talked a lot about how the only security guarantee is what you can provide for yourself. For much of this year, Ukraine has been seeking security guarantees from the United States, from the rest of Europe, and really is seeming to come to this conclusion that nobody's coming to save Ukraine. Ukraine has to have the weapons to defend itself, the soldiers and the military to stop Russia from starting this war should it come to some kind of a conclusion. It was a real speech about self-reliance.
Yeah, and President Trump, Zelenskyy would be pleased with the words he said the day before, talking about how he thought that Ukraine could get its territory back. But President Trump was also keen to push the responsibility for supporting Ukraine with weapons that, as you say, are so important to the European allies.
Yeah, I think that from some of these statements that Trump put out, including that long social media post where he said that there's no reason why Ukraine can't win and take back its territory if Europe and NATO help it do so. I think that really that's something of Trump solidifying this policy that he has had for much of this year, not a shift in policy. Trump sees the United States not as an ally of Ukraine, but as more of a neutral third party in this war. He said in that post, the U.S. is willing to sell weapons, but it's up to NATO to figure out how to get them to Ukraine and up to Ukraine to defend itself. He did really seem to say the onus for figuring this conflict out is on Europe, not on the United States.
Yeah, so how will Russia be receiving then these words from President Trump? I mean, they won't like hearing that he thinks that Ukraine can take their land back, but at the same time, they might be relieved to hear that the U.S. is not going to take any direct part in supplying weapons to Ukraine.
Well, I think the Russians seem to be dismissing what Trump posted about Ukraine taking land back. Former President Dmitry Medvedev himself posted, this is what Trump does. He says something one day and he says something else another day, and soon we'll get the old Trump back. The words, though, that I think the Russians might have paid closer attention to are when Trump gave the green light to NATO allies to shoot down Russian aircraft if they come into NATO airspace. And within the last hour or two, there have been reports of drones. We haven't seen whether they're Russian in Danish airspace again. I think it is clear that there are going to be more tests like that on the NATO alliance. And with Trump giving the green light to shoot Russian aircraft down, I think the Russians are going to see, will NATO pass those tests?
Yeah, thanks for that, Doug, and thanks for seeing the perspective of what more could be coming with those drone flights over other NATO countries. Doug Klain there, non-resident fellow at the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center.
Thanks for having me.